right, guys, welcome back to 3M Affairs podcast. Today we're talking about Tokyo Drifter by director Seijun Suzuki. Sorry, I had to get that out right away because
Josh has been practicing for like 15 minutes.
Yeah, I've been practicing. I wanted to be prepared, with these directors and their names and in Japanese cinema. 1966. I thought it was a fun film, but before we get into that, how are you guys doing? It is August, 4.5 months since I've worked in this quarantine. We're halfway through the year, isn't it crazy?
Yeah, it's
yes, yeah.
It's been a long quarantine. I'm back to working. I started working yesterday.
Yeah, how is it? Where are you? What are you doing?
I'm just bussing. Picked up a job bussing, so it's been great so far. And it's nice to be out doing stuff and making money and, being an adult. So that's good.
Where do you work? So in case any fans want to come say hi and accost you
I'm working
on the job.
I'm working at Hemingway's in Toronto in Yorkville. It's a great spot.
Hemingway's.
Come on and drop by.
It's kind of a bleak name for a bar. He killed himself, right?
I don't
because of alcoholism.
know that it has to do with that. I don't know. It's a New Zealand bar.
I mean, people in New Zealand, I'm sure, have read.
Yeah, I don't know if there's I should look more into that.
He was like one of the world's most notorious alcoholics. I'm sure
it's
there's
kind
a
of like it's a fun bar. It's in Yorkville in Toronto, which is it's a very nice neighborhood. But pardon? What?
No, we're good. We're good.
Yeah,
Sorry.
we didn't say anything.
Oh,
you kind of froze a little bit. But that's okay.
I turned into a robot for a second.
This is what happens when we try and record at home in our home studio living rooms.
Yeah, but I do like being a robot.
It'd be great, to not have to worry about mortality. Yeah. Well, it's kind of like bars. Going back to the name Hemingway's, it's like when bars are named like Shenanigans. It's a little on the nose, and I feel like Hemingway's is a little bit on the nose.
I always liked Oscar Wilde's in New York. That's a nice bar.
We went there right after
before 1-on-1 or after 1-on-1. Oh,
it was like right after our intro thing.
If you are a New York actor, or LA, I think, I would highly,
they have offices.
Highly suggest going to check out 1-on-1. You have to audition to get in, or if you just graduated from an MFA program, you automatically get in. But they have agents and casting director meetings, and it's fantastic. It's a really, really good resource, and I would highly suggest it.
And some of us who have just tried to audition for 1-on-1, who forgot to go into it right after grad school, sometimes you get a come back in 3 months email.
Oh, really? Wait, and how soon do you have to do it after graduation?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, obviously it's been
over a year.
It's been over a year since, because I couldn't find the code. I couldn't find anything. Because I know Hannah, our friend Hannah, does it. And she said that we got there was a code or some sort of promo thing that we could use.
Yeah.
Say, hey, we went to the Actors Studio Drama School and whatever, and couldn't find it. So I just, on the whim, was like, you know what? I'll just put a couple monologues up, and, a day later I got that little email. So that's kind of the start of the, you hate auditioning, but everybody knows that auditioning is part of it. And that you're going to get a lot of no's for one yes, and it's just kind of, but then it's for something like 1-on-1 where you get it, you pay a small fee to become a member for life, I would assume, but you still have to pay to register for these classes and like these different casting directors and stuff. So something that's very much pay to play. I don't understand like the real strict, depending on, obviously, you had to have some sort of like potential for them to be like, oh, sure, come on in. But like during this whole quarantine thing, I figured it was like, I was pretty happy with how the monologues went. I worked on them a lot. And then just kind of getting that, I'm just like, oh, shit. Okay, cool. It still kind of hurts, even though I'm an adult and I understand the business. And,
No, that's never going to go away, dude.
Yeah.
I mean, it hasn't for me.
Yeah.
I still get fucking bummed every time I don't hear back from like, that was really good. And then it doesn't.
Yeah. Or
because somebody with 5 million Instagram followers is like, I want to do it.
Oh, it's fucking nuts.
Well, and now it's starting to ruin shows for me because I'll go out for stuff and then I'll be like, oh man.
But yeah, there are full like shows I will never watch now.
Yeah. 100%.
Just because of bitterness.
Well, it's not bitterness. It's just like I have a hard time now watching the show without thinking about like what, I would have tried as the character and things like that. It just takes me off track. I can't get into it,
Oh, it's bitterness for me. I'm a bitter person. But Brandon's a better person than me. So that's fine.
I mean,
I'm not.
I would say I'm not bitter. I just sit there and I watch these shows and I'm just sit there these like little parts that people get cast for day players or whatever, and they're like the waiter or the bartender, whatever. I'm sitting here going, we could do that. Like, why the hell are we not doing that? It's like, oh, because we don't have, representation, or we have representation, but they, however new they are or whatever the have you. But we watched this. Ryan and I were roped into watching The Kissing Booth 2 with his 12-year-old niece, and
Joey King.
Yeah, it's just not. It was interesting because it's based off a book, right? So it's on Netflix, and there's a lot more cursing than I thought would be in a movie like that. I mean, a lot more adult themes, which is like interesting in my opinion. But one of the lead actors was very much. I'm sure he's a young 28-year-old, good-looking guy in LA, probably a musician who has 500,000 followers. Not the best actor, but at the same time, it's just like I'm sure he was able to. He had such a fan base that he brought all that with him, to the movie. I definitely equate it to like the Disney Channel original movies.
It genuinely at that point doesn't matter if you're good. You know what I mean? And that's what's frustrating about it. But that's why you got to make your own stuff. And that is something that I valued about our education. Like they were really big on pushing you to like develop your own work and create your own path. And that's something that I took away very positively. Even though I do wish sometimes that the other side of it happened a little easier.
Well, it was also very focused on the work, which, there could have been more stuff to help career-wise for sure. But the fact now, a year later, the fact that it was so focused on the work and that's all, we focused on, I think is incredibly helpful. I mean, before I went to school, and we talked about this before, but before I went to school, I was auditioning in Toronto. I'd been working for a while as an actor. But every set I went on, every big audition I went on, I also knew that had I got the job, everybody would say exactly what Josh is saying right now. Because I didn't know how to not just...
They would have said you're really good looking.
They would have said that I wasn't a good actor. Because...
I'm sorry, I had to. No, I totally know what
I
you
didn't
mean.
know how to do
is,
anything but scratch the surface. Or more so, Caleb, like, walk around kind of modeling as an actor and not really doing anything, all surface level. Obviously, school.
Just like voguing and hitting your mark.
And like, going off of, also I'm a little bit crazy. So, I let some things fly in the beginning and that helped a lot. But you know what I mean? It's just, there's a difference between when you can put in that many hours for 3 years, you get your 10,000 hours or whatever, you learn how long it takes to really build a character and for it to actually get into you. Anyways, yeah. Sorry, some thoughts.
Yeah, no, I think we're at, and the coronavirus does not help 100%. Like, it's just one of those things where you kind of get sucked into this, you submit for auditions, I submitted for a couple of short films and a feature, whatever, but like also understanding type and knowing that like, when they say, athletic build, they're meaning Michael Phelps and not me, although I would say I am an athletic build. But it's kind of navigating that, but then realizing like the comfortable level of being in a room with other people, and if you are comfortable with being around other actors yet, and in New York I would be a little bit, in LA I probably wouldn't be. It's like you see all these things with like the sports and everything like that, and it's not going well, and it's just kind of like what do we do? We more of an incentive to actually get together and create, like with this podcast or, any kind of shorts or, I kind of want to go and put a speaker on out in the park and dance.
And also everything goes into something. You know what I mean? Like we've been doing this podcast for 20 some weeks now or something like that.
Yeah, I guess so. 22 weeks.
I have a audition at the end of August for a talk show where they talk about movies. Like, you know what I mean?
Oh my God.
Like, that's like
Yeah.
karmic, you know what I mean? And I'm prepared for that because we've been doing this now for 20 weeks. So,
100%.
everything goes into something,
This better be priority, Brandon.
It's a Sunday morning,
No, he's
Josh,
absolutely gonna
and I
leave us
closed
behind.
last
He's
night.
totally gonna
It
leave
is
us.
clearly a priority, you son of a bitch.
He's gonna dump us the second he gets on Canadian TV.
You know how long
No,
I've been
I
up?
appreciate it,
Fucking
Brandon. I
garbage.
know.
Josh, I got up nice and early this morning to watch Tokyo Drifter. All right, I want to hear it.
See what's funny is that you keep waiting until the day of, and so we keep pushing it back.
What are you talking about?
I was hoping you would be planning.
No, I plan always.
You'd be planning on going Friday
No,
morning.
I always watch them in the morning before.
Yeah.
Oh, right. That is your thing.
Because remember, remember everything like way more.
Yeah, we made a discovery.
That's true.
Yeah.
No, you're
Yeah.
right. Like, I have to watch it twice so I can take notes on the second time. I
Yeah,
get
and
it,
also
definitely.
it makes sure.
Oh, I appreciate it, Brandon.
Thank you. But it also makes sure that I've been up for hours before the podcast and I've had multiple coffees, so I'm not a grumpy asshole.
Well, I mean, there could be merit to an episode of us waking up 5 minutes before and just like.
I don't know.
No, I don't know.
I don't know
Probably
about
not.
that.
Yeah.
We'll all just start fucking biting each other's heads off.
Caleb's our gauge. He's our moderator.
The last minute, we all clearly forgot, and just
Oh,
that'd be a fun game if, like, every once in a while, one of us didn't watch the movie and we saw how long it would take
it would be
for the other two to figure it
It would
out.
be immediate.
Oh my god,
It would be
yeah.
immediate. Like, also,
It depends. I don't know.
I don't know. We do a really good job at like bouncing off each
We're all
other
pretty
in
good at
terms
improv.
of if Caleb is a really good source that he talks about things and we can easily bounce off of him and
But then
pretend
if
that
it's
we
me
know.
that didn't watch it, then what are we gonna do?
Yeah, then we're fucked. I'm sorry.
No, I'm just kidding.
uh,
Anyway, like 5 hours ago, Wilford Brimley died, and I'm really kind of bummed about
Yeah.
that. He was the
Yeah, I saw that.
diabetes guy, but he was also in The Thing, which is like one of my favorite movies of all time. And it was one of those people that it's like, oh, you were alive? I
Sure.
assumed he's been dead, but then I guess he just died. So that's, R.I.P.
yeah,
Aw.
no, it's a bummer.
I don't know.
It is interesting about these actors that you recognize, but they haven't been active for the last like few years or a handful of years, and it just always kind of takes you by surprise. You're like, oh shit, wait, oh,
No. Yeah, no, it's always like, wait, what happened?
Yeah, exactly. Speaking of, after this, I have to watch Beyonce's new visual album on Disney Plus, Black is King. I think
It's
it's.
based on
God.
Disney. It's based on Lion King or something.
Drop
Yeah.
everything. As anytime Beyonce does anything, you have to drop
Well,
what
of
you're
course.
doing and tune in.
And then
It's the law.
I can watch it and be like, how the hell did you create a visual album during quarantine? Stay inside.
How did that
Yeah,
multimillionaire
what do you mean?
accomplish that, Josh? A question
House
for the
is like
ages.
the size of the state, I'm sure.
Yeah, no, I know. Yeah, you're right. Well, speaking of visual albums, no, it actually is a good segue. So today we watched Tokyo Drifter by Seijun Suzuki, 1966, like I mentioned. R.I.P. He passed away in 2017. But he made this great kind of surrealistic, they say, kind of movie based on a pop song, or it was formed around a pop song called Tokyo Drifter. What are your guys' thoughts? I have a lot of information. I watched the interviews on the Criterion Collection, and so there's a lot of cool kind of production tidbits that I'm going to be interjecting. But initial thoughts from you guys.
I'm glad that you have lots of tidbits because I don't know that I fully understood everything that was going on because subtitles and just lazy.
Yep.
But I loved and was annoyed by this whole 10-meter gun shooting range thing that he had the whole time. So for the viewers, the character in the movie, I mean, he's a gangster and then becomes like an ex-gangster, and then his like boss, who was like his guy before, they were super tight, like kind of turns on him, and anyways, he goes on like a whole, awesome killing spree of dopeness. But they all have these pistols. It's all handgun shooting, and he keeps like saying how he can only his range is 10 yards. So he has to like dive and duck and weave to get there. And then at 10 yards, he kills everybody. And it's like, it's like video game rules in a way. And I kind of love it. But at the beginning, I was like, what the hell is happening? So that's my rant.
Yeah.
I liked it. It wasn't what I was expecting going in. I'm not sure what I was expecting, but it wasn't that. I feel like it took me a while to get like invested. I would say the first 25 minutes to maybe even a half hour, like the presentation is just so confusing. To me,
Agreed.
It's very like, I found it very difficult to follow. Like you were saying, Brandon, like I got the gist of what was happening, where like this man is like they're Yakuza, but they're trying to become legitimate ex-Yakuza, but then there's a business deal, and then there's double crossing, and then there's triple crossing, and then now, so like at the end of the first act, now the guy is like, I have to wander.
Yeah.
And everybody's like, no, you don't though. Like what? Like, no, but he's like, no,
I do.
I have to, I must do this. And his girlfriend's like, like what? And he's like, I'm sorry, I cannot be with you. And it is kind of convoluted, but then like once he starts like getting into gunfights and fistfights, and it gets engaging and it becomes very fun and very interesting. But like I found the beginning to be, and I even like I restarted it. I was like, maybe I missed something.
Wow.
But
Okay.
I think it's like just it's very obtuse. And I don't know why that is. I don't know why they made like I think it's edited pretty poorly. I know it's like the 1960s and it's the Tokyo film system.
There are some very sharp edits of
I'm trying to keep
like there's the
context
hole
in
here.
mind, but I found it very, I was like, oh God, is it going to be this the whole time? And then, you know, the movie starts like a half hour in and it becomes very entertaining, and, you know, there is lots of stuff to appreciate, but I was kind of really thrown off by that beginning. And it was like, oh my God, I hope this isn't the whole thing.
Oh, no,
I mean,
100%. And real quick, Brandon, sorry.
No,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead.
I was just going to like kind of clarify, because the second time I watched it, I did write down exactly the situation, because I was trying to figure out, okay, so what exactly is the structure of this? Why are they fighting? What is going on? What's thing? And so, you know, you have a businessman, you know, Yoshi. The whole thing is that like,
Yoshi!
Thank you. That Kurata and Tetsu, who is Watari, the lead actor, the Tokyo Drifter, they go straight. And that's a big thing that they try and like drive home, is that, no, we've gone straight. We're not gangsters, you know. But they own a building and their lease is up. And so they
Right.
owe like 3 million yen is in Japanese currency.
Yes,
right?
it is. It's very good.
And they have to get it in like 3 days. So that it's like a large amount, like some millions of yen. And so they're trying to work out a deal. And Tetsu is like the errand guy of Kurata, right? And so they have a thing, but all of a sudden there's like this third guy that comes in, Atsuka, with the sunglasses, which gave me a very like Resident Evil, like Wesker vibe. If you guys notice, like the red jacket and the sunglasses, he's always like, ooh, you know, like one of my favorite moments that Ryan and I busted out laughing first time was when he enters the piano lounge where his Tetsu's girlfriend is singing, and he backhands the piano guy, and he just like, without even flinching, backhands him, and the guy goes flying off screen. I thought that was really funny. Anyway, so he goes in, he tries to actually, you know, he kills Yoshi or whatever because he buys the building, and then he uses that as leverage to kind of push Tetsu, because the whole thing is like Tetsu the Phoenix, right? Don't get him mad because he's going to be a hurricane, you know, type of thing. Like, get him mad 3 times and he's going to, you know, blow up and go crazy. But essentially, Otsuka pushes him out of town, or like the Viper, Tatsu, which is really confusing because there's Tatsu and Tetsu. Tetsu's the blue jacket. Tatsu is the Viper. He's in the tan jacket. And he has to leave Tokyo, like Caleb said. And then at some point in the movie, which is really weird, and the second time I was watching, it was like, why is this happening? this late in the movie. There's also, he goes to a different town. I forget the name, but there's like the northern
It's in like
kind of group and the south group or whatever.
And there's another guy.
There's
Yeah,
another
I like
guy
that guy though.
called Shooting Star with the green jacket,
that guy was
who used
cool,
to
but it
be
was like
who used to work for Atsuka. Trying to say these names a lot so I can get them in my mouth.
Yeah.
He was a drifter as well. He went off and did a solo career thing, but then Tetsu's like, "Oh, I don't trust you because you don't have any duty. You don't have any sense of duty." And it's just like, okay, buddy, get over yourself. But it's all kind of connected to, Kurata, who then again betrays him because of something. But then everything happens and it all kind of, quote unquote, works out. But then he ends up walking into the darkness and being a drifter. So that, in a nutshell, if people could, follow along a little bit, it does. I'm just trying to paint that kind of web that can be hard to get if you're not paying attention, if you're not just sitting there reading the subtitles to write everything down.
I mean, I don't think it was an issue of, not paying attention. I think it is presented in a very scattered way. Like, it is not clear.
No,
I think that they could have done.
Yeah, like Caleb,
yeah.
I agree 100% with what you're saying. I had not that I had no idea what was going on. There was no way invested until, half an hour, 40 minutes into that movie. Really, until you met the green jacket guy. And then I was like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
So we're starting a story now. Great. Things might happen. Also, the beginning of the movie. And again, that first,
the black and white part.
What the fuck? It looked so bad compared to the rest of the movie.
So one of the interviews, the director Suzuki said, "Yeah, I just want to do something different."
Okay,
that's
fair. Then I like it. Then I like it.
People try and analyze it, oh, what does the red gun mean and things like that. And he's like, no, I just wanted to do something different because, mind you, a little backstory. So Tokyo Drifter, he was a contracted director for this production company where they just give him scripts and he's contracted to direct whatever they give him, right? And Tokyo Drifter was one of these movies that was specifically used for Tetsu, who's the lead actor. He was a big star back in the 60s in Japan, and this movie was supposed to be a vehicle for him to become famous.
Was it?
But after... Yes, but exactly, and that's there's a 1997 interview that Suzuki's like, yeah, did I ruin his career? I don't know, but the studio did not like my movie. They had to reshoot the ending. The original ending was supposed to be this green moon rising to signify peace between Tetsu and whatever, and I think his girlfriend.
Sure.
But they didn't like that, so they had to refilm it to be him standing in the white on the staircase looking all action starry.
Yeah.
And it was a pop song. So then Tokyo Drifter, it's a pop song movie. So it's essentially they use that song as the combining element to kind of keep you going through, which is kind of cool. The song's catchy as hell, in my opinion.
Well, I liked the two things that I really loved about this movie are the use of music and the use of color. And we'll get into, color, I'm assuming, at some point. But, if we're on music right now, I liked that the movie was structured almost like a Bollywood film in a way. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Bollywood at all. I don't watch a ton of it, but not just the fact that there are musical numbers, but the characters in diegetically, in the world of the film, sing as a part of their act. He would sing almost his theme song every time he was coming in to kick some ass. Yep. I was this is the anime's intro music coming in anytime there's a fight, and I thought that was so fun.
It felt very anime all the way through, especially with the gun thing and all that too. Yeah,
like you were saying, a video game almost, Brandon. I totally see how you got that.
There were rules to their gunfights, not rules that were explained, but clear rules in that, okay, well, if he's this close to you, he's going to shoot you in the face. But if he's 11 yards away, every bullet that he shoots misses, and everyone else can't shoot for shit.
There were rules that they just weren't the rules of physics that we know. Right. which is fine because it's a movie and I thought all of that stuff was really entertaining.
Totally
but
fine.
It is
Have
also
you seen Wanted?
ridiculous.
Because that's the entire plot. And it's awesome.
You mean bullet bending or whatever the fuck they do?
Yeah, it's sick.
All right.
Did you
Cool.
guys notice though? But with the song though, real quick tidbit I told Caleb is that so the recording producers or the company with the record made the Watari sing it multiple times. They had to break up the song so that they did one phrase a lot, and they took the best cut to put in the movie. So the guy, like, here's the thing about this star system that the Japanese cinema had, is that you get this actor who's very popular and he needs a movie to kind of get his career started. You know, he gets this Tokyo Drifter, which is very, you know, very stylistically, you know, designed. It's, you know, it's a pop song, and so they used vibrant primary colors, which I love. I can't wait to get into it, because I think that was probably one of the best parts of the movie, and the reason I got so excited in terms of filmmaking. Because mind you, this movie had, because he wasn't a well-known director in the 60s, he did like 42 movies in 12 years, I think. Kind of a thing, because they were just dishing it out. That he only had a budget of like 20 million yen, which the big time directors during that time got 40 million. And so they only had 25 days to shoot, 3 days to edit and video, sound, whatever. And then that was like the system they had, right? But the problem and what you kind of got with the acting side of it if you see his performance, is that every time he would say action, Watari would freeze. He couldn't say his line unless you like poked him. And so there's a lot of times where, and he said it was very frustrating because he would be sitting in a chair. They had to have like an AD behind him. Like he says, hit him with a broomstick. I'm not sure how accurate that is, but because he would just freeze and he would clam up and he wouldn't say the lines. It's just an interesting thing where we talked, you know, at the beginning of the episode about these actors who get these opportunities who are just like, oh, come on, you know, make a choice. But, you know, or I watched Hollywood on Netflix, the Ryan Murphy thing about these actors coming from the Midwest going to LA and changing their name, getting an agent, being manufactured to be put into these movies so that they can become famous or whatever. And I just, that dichotomy of like the craft and the love of creation versus like just a manufactured thing, right? And so that's kind of how you got the kind of the genre-y kind of surrealistic thing, is that he finally was like, you know, I'm going to make my movie, but this actor kind of, you know, isn't the best, they say.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I wanted to touch on something you just said, though. You know, it's really interesting. The kind of factory system of actors back in the day. And, you know, I think that's part of the whole social media conversation or YouTube conversation or everything else, in that, you know, that system obviously is not a thing anymore. You know, there's certain things you can say like Disney or things like that, but that system doesn't work. You know, they all leave and half of the things go to hell. I mean, they're all incredibly talented, but even that, like, I don't know that that's so much of a thing anymore as compared to what it was.
I mean, definitely not compared to what it was, but I mean, there are definitely like people like The Rock, I would say.
But that's hold on.
That fits that mold.
So that's 100%, but that's the point that I was going to make. And exactly that. So now, right, he is the studio. You know what I mean? Like, he's the studio guy, and
right,
like,
he produces most of what he does, yeah.
Well, but even that, like even before that, but he put himself in that position, right? The Rock was looked at as a guy when he was first started acting that was like not an actor, was never going to, you know, really go into that, only kind of do comedies and things like that. Now he's the highest paid actor in Hollywood.
What do you mean? Are you forgetting about The Mummy 3, The Scorpion King?
But what I'm saying is
I hate you so much.
You know, going through the WWE, yes, being The Rock, being a personality like he is, and then making that transition, you know, he did it for himself. And he put out who he was, which just seems so much more important these days than, you know, and it's just very different, you know?
There's a difference between The Rock kind of building his own brand and then like Judy Garland getting like addicted to heroin by like 13.
Right.
So yeah, for sure.
Right. I mean, because that was the studio systems back in the day where you sign these studio contracts. I mean, it's not a thing anymore from what I understand.
You sign your life away. It's definitely different in some ways and similar in other ways. I totally see what you mean. But bringing it back to Tokyo Drifter, that's interesting because I would have thought that guy, like for what they were going for, I feel like the actor was like stoic and I feel like they made it work for this character, but that's interesting to know that he was actually just like terrified. This guy who's like this supposed to be this badass killing machine is actually like petrified of like saying lines.
Yeah,
that's kind of wonderful in a way. Like,
and it makes me think of like, it's kind of what we train for at the studio. Like it's like when they say action, you're dropped in, you can like go right.
Yeah. You're ready before
you're ready before they say action. But what if like our first feature on like Disney or like for Warner Brothers, it's like, are we going to be able to do it? That's the question.
Well,
we will, but
there's that story. There's the story of like when Daisy Ridley, it was like the first day of Star Wars, and she was just from London, like had never really been in anything, and I guess like after her first take, JJ came over to her and was like, "So that was like a little stiff, so we're just gonna try to like loosen you up," and she started to like cry because she was like, I'm fucking up Star Wars. Like, this is my big break. You know what I mean? Like, it happened, it happens to people if they're not like experienced. And now she's like going to work forever,
Every actor talk about that. And the fact, everybody has imposter syndrome. It doesn't go away. Like you hear major actors constantly be like, every first week of every movie I'm on, I think I'm going to get fired. It's such a common thing. So.
Oh, yeah.
And then some people do. But sometimes you actually do just suck. Or you're an asshole or whatever. But
Brandon, I want to talk about your thought of it kind of almost looking like a video game, minus the like every gun sounded like a phaser, or like a pew pew pew. Like it was crazy. Like the gun effect, this gun sound effect or whatever they used for the sound effect was crazy. It almost looked like it was a video game, like a Star Wars movie.
So the first thing that made me think about that was I think it's the second or third time that he talks about this, 10 yards range for his pistol. And it's when they're on the train tracks, right? And Tim and the other guy.
Which is a great shot, by the way. It was really cool. It was a really cool shot.
When he looks down and he sees a red line in the snow 10 yards in front of him.
Yeah.
Of course.
I was like...
Well, that's how he knows.
So then I was like, oh, okay. So now we're manifesting these rules in a real life, which I liked, but I was also like, what the fuck was that? But with the red line, I didn't know exactly what was going on, so that was confusing.
I'm assuming it's because Tetsu, the actor, didn't really know how far to go, and so Suzuki's like, okay, Jesus Christ, we're going to paint the red line, we're going to use it. It's going to be a justified choice.
For sure.
Just dive there.
But
but how far do I go? It's just like this director screaming in the background. Like,
and then there was all these scenes with him like standing in the middle of rooms surrounded by like 50 gunmen and jumping all around and diving all around. In these very, very almost static poses. Right? Like it wasn't fluid at all. Like you watch John Wick and Keanu Reeves is ducking and weaving through people like it's real life and he's the best Marine in the world.
Yeah.
This is obviously it's
okay.
Okay, but you know what I'm saying? Like this is
you're gonna take like
1966, obviously, and way back. It's just like it felt like a video game in that like every time he jumped or rolled, like it felt like a move that you pressed. Like everything looked the same in that way. And it's not bad. It's just like, okay.
Yeah.
And the NPCs all stand there and waiting for you to
and then you have like 6 moves. You have dive forward, you have roll left, you have like,
Stunt choreography and fight choreography has certainly come a long way since 1966 Japan. I don't know. Visually, it was very interesting. The use of color is, I think, something that like everybody talks about when you talk about this movie. Like you have to
can we talk about it? I think what were the I know for me one of the better moments in my opinion that I first experienced the whole like use of color and be like, oh, that was really cool. What was one of yours?
Well, just go. You go first.
Oh, well, you were talking. I didn't want to. Anyway,
we're already here.
Okay, we're here. So there's a shot. So with like the shots of the movie, there were a lot of very there were some overhead shots that were kind of cool and some very straight on, very square. I don't know how you would say it, symmetrical shots. So especially when he's like walking in the snow, right? Mm-hmm. And like there's these wide shots of him in the snow on the pathway and the red phone booth, the red lantern, these really cool like contrasts. But for me, there was one of the buildings they were in when one of the secretary or whoever gets shot and then her lover gets shot. and then they go into this whole like murder mystery or love or suicide.
That woman.
She was like,
Can we talk about her
I think
really
I wrote,
quickly?
yeah. No. I wrote down, girl, what is so funny?
I want to read that book.
She fucking loved it.
I thought that she was the girlfriend.
No, she wasn't the singer.
She's so annoying. I can't believe we have to fucking follow her through the whole movie, and then she just gets shot in the chest. I was like, oh. And then, you know, the actual girlfriend who's like really good at singing, and then that's like a cool little music thing that ties in. Where
she was reading a comic book or a manga, and
she loved whatever the fuck was going on in that comic, dude. She could not get enough. And it's like one of those things that you can tell, like the director was like laugh, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And she's like, ah, ha, 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 ah, ha, ha. And then that guy just fucking shot her. It's like, what the fuck? And that's kind of, you know, this is in the beginning where I'm like, I'm not invested at all.
Sure.
So I'm like, Josh, what the fuck are you making me watch? And then, you know, I would agree, like that shot of them double. You're talking about the double murder, right?
Yeah, but before that, there's a white scrim or a psych or whatever with like it's like halfway red, right? And that was when I think the woman dies. It's half red. And then when the guy gets shot, it's full red. And as soon as either when the scene's over or something happens, it goes right to white. Very quick change to white. And I felt like, I was like, oh, that is so cool. And it leads back to like the club, right? Or like their use of a minimalistic set, a very sparse set. For them, it's like they didn't have the budget to do a full set. So what they chose to do was clean, simple kind of designs like the doorway or the archways, and then just white psych or backdrops where they can project light onto. So they're in the club, it's going to be yellow, right? Yeah. There's a moment at the end with Kurata and Otsuka, you know, that they're waiting for. They're making the girl sing, right? And there's like a really tight spotlight on her. Everything else is black, and there's just a red on the statue. You guys notice the statue with the donut or whatever, the holding to some sort of circular thing was red. You know, a lot of things like that I felt really made it for me, and I can understand why directors, filmmakers, you know, decades later would look at this film and be like, "Oh, this is really cool. I'm going to kind of stylistically, right, production design wise." You know,
I mean, it definitely has its own visual identity, and I think that's helps it a lot for sure. There are moments where I'm like, this is a set. I'm watching a set, and that's kind of distracting. But, you know, there are other moments like I would, you know, again, as the movie goes on, I don't know if it's that I just bought into it more, but the like, not the club in the beginning, but like the other, I don't know if it's still, would you call it a club?
The purple one?
Like the other music place that he goes to, the strip club.
Oh, the saloon.
The saloon.
Like
Thank you. The saloon with the Americans. Like that whole sequence was great. And it looked very like when they're bashing up the place and there's that like big, like mega fight scene. All of that stuff was really looked great. And, you know, the colors and the fact that like the coordination with like the soldiers or the sailors or whatever with those women who were really funny. It reminded me of the House of Blue Leaves, like from Kill Bill. Like I got like really strong vibes like from that, like when, you know, Uma Thurman's in Japan, like that segment. It reminded me of that a lot in like a good way. I love his suit. The baby blue, like the robin's egg blue almost.
Yeah,
like
he definitely had the
suit.
blue theme going on, you know, in his room too.
Yeah, just, I mean, anytime he was fighting people and you could tell he wasn't really hitting them, but they were, it's, you know, it's cheesy, but it's also like very, you know, fun. Like, I don't know if we're meant to take it 100% seriously. And there are moments that we clearly are, like when his girlfriend's like getting, you know, they use like being forced to sing as like a very clear metaphor for sexual violence, which was very uncomfortable. But I mean, she did great. Like whenever she was singing those songs, I really felt, I just wish that I cared more. Like I wish that there was a way in for me sooner. Like I feel like there isn't really a way into the story because these characters are so
broad. Yeah.
Like one dimensional. Yeah. And I felt like I had a really hard time connecting with anything because I don't really know. Like we're told a lot. We're told about the relationship between like the main character and his mentor. You know, they literally say it's like, you have been like a father to me. Well, you know what I mean? Like it's very like, we got to get all the exposition.
He also seems only slightly unamused the whole time. You know, Like, I remember back to John Wick again, and they kill John Wick's dog, and he loses his mind. And you're like, okay, cool. Let's go kill some people with John Wick. Dope. This guy like leaves and they take his girlfriend and all this stuff. And they're like, yeah, no, he's totally going to kill you. And he's like, nah, I don't believe you. I'm just going to wander. And it's like, okay, so why do I care?
Well, that's another thing is
why do I care?
That's another thing. They always are like, you got to watch out because he's like the Phoenix. He's gonna, but he just seems very like over it. Like he's very disaffected, which maybe is a part of his character because he wants to walk away. But I feel like it was just like it. I don't know. I need a story. I'm a story person, and I just felt like this was really like.
Well, even with the pseudo climax, right, where he goes back to the piano, like the original place, and you have the whole thing where he's, face to face with Kurata, and he's fighting the bad guy and stuff. And there's a moment, one of my funniest moments, he like throws the gun up and does like a cartwheel or whatever, and then catches his own gun to shoot the guy. I'd like to think that's where, everybody, James Bond got his little walk and then shoot, but.
Or like the Matrix, like I could tell that the people from the Matrix took some inspiration from this.
And I think that's kind of why I requested it, was because there's itself as a movie, it's not great. It's very surface. It's very much, like we said before, a vehicle for a certain person. Like it was created for this guy. This guy obviously probably wasn't the best actor or whatever, but Japan people loved him, so that they were like, let's get a movie for him. And I think that shows in
was
terms
he a singer
of like
first or
that I don't know. I just know he did sing the song, but I don't know if the song was written and they made a movie.
But if you're saying that like people in Japan loved him, so he wanted his own movie, like
he might have been a pop star. But then I don't understand why the director mentioned that it took him so many times to sing the song. I think the song was written for the movie.
Yeah, and
they needed him to sing it. They felt like that he should be the one singing it, so I think he did.
Again, I think that whole element of it's cool. Like, how these people are like, who's whistling? Who's whistling? And he's like, me, motherfucker, and just like shoots him. Like, that's cool.
Like after the saloon, when he's like laying on the ground, he's like, is he dead? Nope, he just starts whistling.
Yeah, that shit's fun. It's fun, and I don't think this. I wouldn't go as far as to say this is bad. I just feel like, for me, I really wanted a way in, and I feel like I didn't get that until a half hour into the movie. And I think there is a lot of potential with this story. Like Japanese media in general, but specifically this era, deals so much with this idea of honor and what that means in kind of reconciling, old Japan with this like new post-war, quote unquote, modern Japan. And you can tell that that's a big part of the Drifter, of Tetsu's character, is he cares about honor and duty and doing the right thing to the point where it's a detriment to himself. He's frustrated with the way things are changing, and he wants to go legit, and then nobody will let him. And there is compelling stuff there at the meat of it, but it's just presented in such an inaccessible way. And then when the story does get going, they kind of lose sight of that in favor of doing all of this like silly action stuff, which is entertaining for sure. But I think that if they had found a way to marry those two elements of it, it would have worked a lot more for me personally.
100%. And I think kind of what Josh was leading to before is that what is important about this movie is exactly like you're saying. There's so much that can come from it, and that did come from it. Like the archetype of that character. The just general linear story, of this whole gangster thing. Like we've seen so many of these movies, so it is definitely, had its impact. But I'm assuming it's, like the first one kind of that, genre or type of movie, or at least of the archetype of the character. So yeah, it's interesting to see, all these years later, a movie like John Wick, which is virtually the same plot, just expanded upon, and now we have 3 of them. And they're dope.
Which is funny because Keanu Reeves himself is kind of like a brand. Yeah. So that
his style of how he acts.
That fits into like that whole thing as well, where like that was his like comeback. Like he was doing nothing for a decade, and then he did John Wick, and now he's fucking everywhere. Like He's in Toy Story.
He's the man.
He's in video games. He's in everybody loves him, and it's just so interesting.
I'm just reading a couple of things. So I mentioned before that the director Seijun Suzuki directed 42 films in 12 years with these studios. A lot of them like the second tier build movie for these double features. And he said that it's a lot for just entertainment, right? He really loved Westerns. He didn't necessarily take inspiration from them in terms of creating, like, let's say, Tokyo Drifter. But there are some elements in terms of like entertainment purposes, right? Like we're talking about how it was just kind of fun and goofy and like some things were ridiculous. But, you know, he gets a lot of these scripts that are just entertainment. So he's like, my job is to make it fun. I usually change something in the script because they're not good scripts. But well, how can I make this as a director? Because I have to make this. Oh, let's use some, colors and some young, and just make it fun because why not? He was also blacklisted for 10 years after this, after 67, I think, when he did Branded to Kill, which is one of his other really famous movies. 10 years. And then he did a couple things after late in the century, but...
Well, what happened? Why was he blacklisted?
I think it was probably it's contentions between the production company. I don't remember what it was, but because it was something I'd have to do some research.
It sounds like a contract thing. It sounds like they had him under contract.
He did not. It's a contract thing. Yeah, he did not. They did not like him at all in his movies.
Damn. That's tough.
But the consequence of that, though, he did say that you don't see a lot. The reason Japanese cinema, we had, in the 90s, this was the interview in the 90s, but like when you haven't seen like the content coming out of Japan like it used to, is because a lot of these directors were contract directors, or they were hired as ADs or production assistants or whatever, who wanted to be these, like, there was 3 major names. I forget who they were, but who were doing like the big budget films. There was not a culture of like teaching the younger directors or showing them, how to carry on the culture of Japanese cinema, that there was this almost this fear, like they weren't approachable enough for this challenge, right? They'd say, "Oh, Suzuki, you want to challenge so-and-so?" He's like, "Well, no, I don't really want to challenge him. I just want to, get to know how he does things." But there's this competitiveness, right? And they lost the drive to like be competitive, to like push that envelope, because there wasn't this, culture to do so. And so I find that very interesting in the sense of like we saw House, we saw, a decade earlier, Tokyo Drifter, and it's like these like big kind of cool cult classic type movies. And then all of a sudden like just kind of a drought in the,
Well, it's just funny because
90s.
like at the same time all this stuff's getting made, you have people like Kurosawa or Ozu that are like defining cinema.
Yeah.
So that's happening and existing, but that, like you were saying, that's the very top level, like those are the guys. And then for other people, I can see why it would be difficult to find a play, like they're making the art, right? So the studios are like, but we also want to, that discrepancy between art and entertainment.
Yeah.
So they're like, yeah, we'll just have everybody else make money for us so that Kurosawa and Ozu can create like masterpieces.
Right.
So I can see how that would be frustrating if like you watched like Akira Kurosawa or Yasujiro Ozu and you're like, I want to do that. And then like you like work and this is like your dream. And then the studio's like, well, no, you're making Tokyo Drifter and fucking House.
Yeah.
But like to still be able to put your own spin on that, I think is like, I love House. Like we have our disagreements on it, of course. But I think, it is just like a very creative expression artistically. And I think there's elements of that in Tokyo Drifter as well.
I just think the time of it, the year that it's made it's so on the cusp of everything changing. And that I think that's why it doesn't hold up as well.
Yeah. I mean, maybe, I don't know. Like there are definitely films from the 60s that I think hold up. I think like, the time, the like period isn't always like an excuse. Like this movie has some pretty bad editing, dude.
Well, it's like the whole thing. There's one scene that pops out is he's like in the car. He's like the driver of this car. And then there's all this like burnout type of stuff and like this like gravel yard. And all of a sudden it cuts to them at the arcade, weird. And she goes, "Hey, you want to come up for some tea?" And he's like, "No." And I was like, dude, she's offering herself to you.
Yeah, she wants to fuck. And he's like, I'm sorry.
He's a wander.
I've gone straight.
And that was the other thing, dude. At the end, it's like, again, I understand you're thematically what you're doing, but like, she's like, bro, like, can we like, please? You know, she came all the way to find him, and he's like, nah.
No. Oh yeah, on the train. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't have these hoes weighing me down. And like,
and that's the only reason that he gives. Like, there's no practical reason. She's like, nope, I have to wander.
He's like, women slow, and it's just like, what? Like, you know what I mean? It's just like, what the fuck? I don't know.
Yeah, I was sorry. I'm going through my notes. So there's this one of the times that he's singing. He's walking in the snow. I think it was towards the end when he's with the Southern group, and the Northern group, whatever, fighting, and he has to like kind of get in between that, and he gets pulled back in. Right. He's walking on this like snow cliff kind of pathway, and it was snowing, and the way they shot it totally reminded me of Bolin and Korra when he's a movie star, and he has to in the snow, and he's I forget what his movie star name is, but I thought it was just so funny. I kind of chuckled, just kind of throwbacks to kind of how, you know, we talked about Korra, the Legend of Korra, and how they very stylistically in like the 20s, 30s, kind of with the radio announcer, and with these kind of what we were talking about, these like producers that make these movies, like, you're gonna be a star, but just do everything I say.
I feel that. What are you guys thinking? Ratings?
Real quick, before we do that, one last little thing I wanted to get on air is, with the low budget, they didn't rehearse anything.
Even the choreography?
So really? For this?
They said they had no rehearsals. They didn't have time.
That's hilarious.
They had no time. So my interesting thing with the saloon, right? Well, I mean, I'm sure they kind of managed time where if one scene was shooting or whatever, they would be like they would do their own thing. But there wasn't like, we're going to shoot this scene today, so we're going to do a couple of runs, rehearse it, and then go. You know, it's like that saloon scene with like the fucking platform falling down and somebody falling off a table, which I think is actually was accidental, because the way he fell, it was really funny. You know, but it's like there was some sort of like framework. I'm sure they set it up and like talked about it, but in terms of actually rehearsing and doing the thing, they said they didn't rehearse. So I find that very interesting, especially in that huge group fight scene.
Yeah, at the end, because that's the saloon. I would be shocked if there was no preparation for that. Yeah, because that seemed like it took a lot of coordination. I would be.
Well, I don't know.
I'm sure that they maybe didn't rehearse like the dialogue scenes or whatever, but there's no way you can do that without a couple run-throughs.
I don't know. We went
all the slaps. Those women were great.
Suzuki also mentioned he doesn't like storyboarding, because then he doesn't want to let the actors or the crew know what's going to happen next. He likes the spontaneity of it.
Well, some of those shots were really well composed, so that's interesting that he didn't storyboard. What an odd little movie. There's so many little things.
Yeah, it's so quirky.
I thought it was a nice little pick from the barrel, you know?
Yeah, there's a lot to like about it for sure. I just, what? Just what?
Yeah.
That lady, I want to read that comic book. I'm going to track that down.
Oh my god.
Cuz it was fucking hysterical. She was having the time of her life.
All right, when you find it, bring it on and we'll read, if you can pause the movie and see what
yes, I'll do research.
Oh, sorry. Caleb, I don't know why this just reminded me of this real quick, and if this isn't a thing that I think it's got to be fine, but I just saw a call for a JoJo's whatever show, a live action one for Netflix.
They're doing JoJo's for Netflix.
Yeah. So
it's very interesting. Have either of you seen JoJo's Bizarre Adventure?
No, we talked about it a bit, but yeah.
It's
But so they're doing live action. So
wow.
I don't know how I feel about all that stuff. I think there's this weird like attitude that people have that like you need to like legitimize a story and like an animated thing by like, but we're gonna remake it in live action so it's like real, or like so it's like what it's like. No, dude, like animation's its own medium, and like there are certain stories and things you can only do there.
I don't know that's the attitude. I think it's Netflix just being like, let's buy all the source material. We're gonna make everything.
But then like you just buy the rights and then like broadcast it.
I'm sure. I'm sure that there's no way they're making a live action. They didn't buy the rights to the cartoon.
If that wasn't the attitude, then like people wouldn't watch the Disney stuff that they do. Like people wouldn't have watched the Death Note thing. People wouldn't have watched like anytime they try to do like the Avatar thing. It's like, we're going to make it like a movie. And it's like, it already is like perfectly fine how it exists. I don't understand why people are like, but it's live action. It's like, so what? Who cares? It's already perfect. Yeah. You're going to ruin it. And they always have. None of it never, ever turns out well. It has never one time worked. And that's what is so funny to me about it. I can't think of one time where it's turned out good.
No.
Sorry, I didn't need to get us off track. But yeah, I thought that would be interesting.
No, it's okay. That is very interesting. I look forward to hearing more about it when it gets closer.
Yeah, great.
Cool. Who wants to go first on the rating of Tokyo Drift?
It's your movie, baby.
Great. I'm going to give it a 4.5.
Damn.
I thought my reasoning is more towards the movie making, as we talk more about actually creating our own stuff and low budget and being creative with what you have. I thought it was well done, including, adding the music and things like that. So I'm going to be bold and say the 4.5.
It's the highest honor you can bestow.
I'm still waiting. Once we do the Dark Knight, I'll give it a 5. I'm just kidding.
Ooh, nice. I want to do that. I'm going to give it a 3. I definitely appreciate where it fits into cinema's history. I appreciate what they did in the movie. It's just, really what Caleb said about the first 30 minutes is very much my main concern as well. But it was entertaining. It's fun. I like the video game rules in shooting. So yeah, I'm going to give it a 3.
Cool.
I gave it a 3.5 after I watched it. I'll stick with the 3.5. I think there's enough there that I like can appreciate about it. I'm sure if I watched it again, I would like it more. But it is a tough first half hour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I tell you, before the second time I watched, I did watch the interviews, which is available on the Criterion Collection, and the reason why I wanted to bring a lot of that stuff up is because I do think it kind of informs and shapes kind of like, oh, okay, now I get, all right, that makes sense.
And that's great, but like that it should be like that kind of stuff should be supplemental. Like I shouldn't need interviews to like, get it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I agree. Like, I mean, like it's when we were talking about white material, like when you get that extra context, it adds to the already what I thought was a great experience. But if it's something like where you need that stuff to like have a good experience, and that's just me, course, you clearly got a lot more, and I'm stoked that you got a lot out of it. But it's like, looking forward to the next one.
Are you?
Speaking of next one, right. We have
I forgot what the next one was.
The next one, we have a very, very special episode of 3M Affairs podcast. We are doing Tokyo Drift, the third movie in the Fast and Furious series. And we have a special guest, Marlon Kahihe, a actor, MFA holder from the Actors Studio, will be on to talk about what is definitely one of his top favorite movies. I think that's a safe thing to say.
Favorite franchise, absolutely.
100%.
He's the best. We are very excited for you guys to hear him talk. He's the man. We're very excited to have him. And that'll be next week. Tokyo Drift. Tune in.
I can't wait. Remember to, if you like what you're hearing, subscribe, like, share with your friends. 3 guys just goofing around, love talking about movies and the craft. So keep listening. You can follow me at Stir_Joshua and on Instagram and Facebook, Joshua Stir. 3M Affairs podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music or Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, and some Spanish website we now found out. So Brandon, you gonna plug?
Yeah, you should be able to find 3M Affairs podcast anywhere that you can find a podcast. You can also go directly to our RSS feed.
Follow Brandon.
Oh yeah, follow me on Instagram at Brandon McPherson, and anywhere else you'll find me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming we'll have links to all of our socials somewhere.
Yeah.
Find me on Letterboxd at CJC ASDS. You can watch my YouTube. There's another YouTube video in the that's cooking in the oven right now that I think will be really fun. Did you ever watch the other one, Brandon?
No, just because my week got crazy. I got to get them all up for you too. But I'm definitely going to make a response video when I do. So
I'm waiting. That's what I'm saying. I'm waiting for your response. I'm waiting for that.
I'll get there.
Okay. Well, that's it for now for me.
Awesome. Well, Brandon, you want to sign us off?
All right, guys. Thank you
Wait,
for
why
listening.
Brandon? Me? This is my movie.
Yeah.
Sorry, Brandon. You can sign us off next week. I'm going to sign us off.
Oh my gosh.
Thank you for listening
I
to
love
3M
it when he
Affairs.
takes charge.
Daddy, chill. Thank you for listening to us, 3M Affairs podcast. Hope you enjoyed, and tune in next week for Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift.